Welcome to you all, officers and members of the public to the meeting of the council. Please can I remind you all to switch off your mobile phones or please leave them to silent. There are members of the public press attending this meeting virtually. Now please ask those attending virtually switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. To ensure that those attending virtually and in person can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you direct your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore, this goes by the way sometimes, do not refer to each other by first names. When addressing council, please stand if you are able to do so. There is no fire alarm planned, therefore, upon hearing a constant two-tone alarm, please leave the building by your nearest marked fire exit and make your way down the stairs to the nearest assembly point, which is the short stay car park. Lifts are not to be used. Please not take time to pick up personal belongings and leave the building promptly. Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, received apologies from councillors Bullard, Peter Lever, Lovering, Orange, Whitehead, David Knight and Councillor Denton, Chair.
Thank you. To approve the correct record of the minutes of the meeting held on January the 24th, 17th January 2024, pages 11 to 22. Can I seek a mover, please? Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, item 3, Chair's announcement. I'd just like to say a massive big thank you to those who attended my Valentine's ball, and we made £5,197.60 on the evening and obviously tickets, etc. That will be split between the two charities, which will be invited in my last meeting in March, where I'll present them both to the chair. But thank you once again for those, and I hope you have a nice time. Thank you. Item 4. Business brought forward by or with the consent of the chair. There is none. Item 5. Replies to any questions submitted by the public and or to receive petitions under Part 4 Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 89 of the Constitution. None received. Item 6. To consider motion of which notion has been submitted by members in accordance with Part 4 Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 11 of the Constitution. None received. Item 7, declarations of interest.
I've received none, Chair.
Thank you. Item 8, Chair's replies to any questions to council by members submitted under Part 4 Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 10 of the Constitution. None received. Item 9, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B, and there is no Part B. Part A. Item 10. Report of the Leader of the Council, pages 23 and 24. Report by Leader of the Council. Councillor Room to report.
Madam Chair, It's all set out in the report tonight. I know it's a long agenda, but the main highlights facing councillors today is to obviously we've managed to deliver a balanced budget, and actually that's without any losses of services. In fact, it's to increase the services because from the end of March, funding will cease for the Safer Streets marshals, and the council within the budget have put in to fund them for a further 2 years, which is good news for Barnstable and Ilfracombe. So that'll be really good, and I congratulate the officers for putting the getting the figures right on those. So we haven't had to increase that at all. Some good events have happened around the farmers. You know, diversification events that we had two workshops. One was in Olsworthy and one was at Philly, and that's talking to farmers about different ways that they can diversify. You know, some shepherd huts and it involved planning officers who did a good job there at North Devon Plus. So I think farmers, the both were a sellout, and all spaces were taken. So hopefully our farming community got some good advice there from the planners. We've also established the North Devon Community Lottery, which you've most probably seen a lot in the news and the press. And we've got a number of organisations, good causes, particularly those that can't have their own lottery, and this will help them, you know, sports clubs and various charities, so they can register for that and get an income that way from people who want to support them. We've had enhancements to public amenities and open spaces on Ilfracombe Seafront, which will commence the installation of the new play area, and also Ilfracombe's Victoria era charm with its design and materials, so that would be really good. Pennine Playground Limited were the appointed contractor for that. And recently I attended with John Triggs, our Deputy Chief Exec, an event at the Nord Centre talking to businesses, where we presented some of the grants that we could apply for the council, such as the shop frontage or their business frontage. You know, the grant will match £2,000 if they put in £2,000, so potentially they'd have £4,000 to do the business frontage or anything else to enhance that business. And there is still some money left in that council, so if you know of any good businesses that you might be able to set to them up, there's £2,000 available potentially for the council who will match funds. So if they put 700 in, the council will put 700 in, and that's been administered by a North Devon Plus. So if they go on the North Devon Plus website, they'll be able to see that. Could be that there's a cafe or whatever, and it just needs starting up, and it just helps those businesses. But yeah, the report is as it is, and obviously some of these what I put in the report will be on later agenda items, so we can sort that. All right.
Thank you. Any questions? Wilson.
It's not a question, it's a comment, Chair, just to say thank you to everybody that's been involved in the play area down at Ilfracombe. I just want to say what a really positive response it has been from the community, families who are really looking forward to seeing this coming to fruition. Just thank you to the team, and also we're really looking forward to seeing further enhancements to the seafront, thinking about the seafront master plan, and perhaps also something for older teenagers to have to do in the seafront. But yeah, thank you. It's really going to be well used.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how encouraging the report was. I know it's not really a question, but I'd like to thank the leader, because I think that was a really good report and shows that as a council we're making really good strides in all sorts of different areas. And I'm really pleased about the street marshals, for example, in Barnstable and Ilfracombe. That's really good. So well done to the leader of the council and to the council officers and all those involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roon.
Coming from one of the national markers in the country, gets involved marking exam papers. I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. Could do it.
Okay, so I have someone to move to note, please. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Item 11, Devon and Torbay devolution officer, page 25 to 60, Portland 10 miles.
Thank you, Chair. And that should read off that running officer. Thank you, Chair. And I'm joined by Kerry Denton, virtually from Devon County Council. Just to present this report, I'll give a very brief introduction, if I may, and hand over to Kerry for a similar introduction. Hopefully the papers are fairly self-explanatory, but as members are aware from briefings previously given, discussions have been ongoing for some time regarding a deal to provide further powers and further funding from central government, passing it down to a local level. The offer has now been published by central government, and it's now been put out to public consultation, and that's the purpose of the report here tonight. District councils have been invited to respond to that public consultation alongside businesses, residents, etc. Now the report itself doesn't go into the offer paragraph by paragraph, but there were a couple of areas that I've highlighted in the report, and that was based simply on some of the concerns that have been raised and some of the comments that have been raised previously. And the first item really to focus on, I guess, is the governance. And the point that I'd make there is that some of the arrangements around the governance of the combined authority that would be set up are set down by legislation. So there's very little discretion to actually shift away from that. And one of the things that districts in particular have raised concerns about is something that's set down by legislation. And that is who are the constituent councils that can take reserved decisions. And the legislation states that they should be at an upper tier level. So in this particular case, it's Devon County Council and Torbay. And both of those authorities will appoint each 3 members to the board. But there are also 4 non-constituent members, they're called, and district councils will take 2 of those seats. And the suggestion at the moment is that those seats will be passed around the district councils on rotation. So it will be the current chair of the Devon Districts Forum, and also the incoming chair of the Devon Districts Forum. Now, because of the restrictions imposed by the legislation, in Devon, what's being proposed, as you'll see from the paperwork, is the setting up of a joint committee that sits below the county combined authority. And the whole purpose behind that is to enhance the current Team Devon arrangements that we have in place, and provide the county council and the district councils hopefully with a coordinated view on issues that are going before the combined authority. That is what we're hoping will start to allay some of the concerns raised by members around the governance arrangements. The other point I just want to highlight is paragraph 31 of the arrangements, paragraph 25, which makes it clear that this is really the start of a process rather than the finish of a process. A lot of members have looked at the paperwork and said, well, there's nothing very exciting in there. There's not much money coming down. There aren't fresh new powers or anything like that. And whilst that is true, like I said, you should look at this as the start of a process. And if you look at other combined authority areas that have had deals in the past, they've then gone on to have separate deals from central government as well. So it shouldn't be thought of as the finish of the whole process. But the report is there, members. You will no doubt raise concerns and other issues, but I'll pass over to Kerry to see if you have anything to add, Kerry.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, members. Can you hear me okay? Are you able to hear me?
Hang on, getting some IT support.
Okay.
Just one slide. You just one slide.
Why isn't this working?
Does Kerry want to try again?
Yeah, I'm
Hello, can you hear
not
me?
sure why that isn't playing.
Can you sing a song, Mary? Only hear you.
Yeah, that should be working for some strange reason.
Can you talk?
No, I'm sorry, that's beyond me, I'm afraid. No. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be coming out. I don't know.
Can you try again, Kerry?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Try again, Kerry.
Hello, can you hear me?
It's going to open up.
Speakers. This is not the technical issue I needed to deal with. Yeah, so it's coming out here, which means she is sounding. And all the speakers are on there. Which is, I don't know. Check the sound.
There's the master screen.
It's nice settings. Speaker. You try now for me, Kerry?
Hello,
No, sorry. And again?
hello,
No. One more time.
hello.
Yeah.
Oh! That sounds like a cheer. Thank you. Oh, good evening, and thank you very much for having me this evening. I don't have much more to add to the introduction that Ken has already provided, other than to perhaps just praise some of the starting point benefits that the deal could bring to the area, subject obviously to consultation. There would be devolution of adult education budget, which is something centrally held at the moment. That would include the administration and the actual budget, which is about 15 million a year. That would allow us to co-design with our education and training providers the types of adult skills that we feel is required for our local area, on the basis that we wouldn't have to accept a one-size-fits-all sort of national approach. We would also be benefiting from some funding for free courses for jobs, which is something that's just arrived as part of the devolution suite from government. And longer term, we would be able to co-design some of the technical skills training programmes as well. In terms of housing, obviously that is a function that still sits with districts. It's not being absorbed into a combined county authority, but within the devolution arrangement, working very much collaboratively, we would be able to directly engage with Homes England as a partnership to secure a joint pipeline of investment to support a jointly agreed action plan with Homes England. We would fully expect that funding to still be there and available to districts, not held by the CCA, which I know has been raised as a concern in some areas. In terms of transport, that is something that the County Council and Torbay Councils is acquiescing to be moved as Transport Authority powers into the CCA. The benefits of that would be to build on our existing collaborative arrangements, working on the local transport plan. Also gives us the ability to design and deliver a pipeline of transport interventions. It comes with opportunities around ticketing and concessions and support around the bus improvement plans. In terms of net zero, we've put forward and been awarded 16 million to do a net zero set of capital schemes. They are at a high level only, focusing on green skills, greening our businesses, support for infrastructure, potential feasibility studies for ports to look at sort of clean maritime, but also looking at housing and ways in which we can produce low carbon housing. We need to develop a business case for DLUC over the coming months, but that is an additional 16 million, which is within this current comprehensive spending review. We would expect more to flow. And then there's direct engagement with government around influence. So we would have direct contact in the same way that mayoralty administrations currently do to discuss our requirements, our investment needs with the Department of Business and Trade, working with the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, DEFRA as well as DCMS. So in terms of tourism, that's quite significant, and a commitment also to work with the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. So as Ken says, it's a starting position. It was described by a civil servant the other day as it means that Devon and Torbay would stop being some little speck on a map to a dot. Now, I'm not quite sure what size of dot they might be drawing, but certainly we're starting to see conversations with government already flowing. Department for Work and Pensions, as an example, has already started to reach out to us, to Lancashire, are in similar situation with the devolution process, to start thinking about the Universal Support Scheme, which is another area of central investment and central policy that they would be looking to devolve to the local level. So the only other thing I wanted to add is that in addition to the Team Devon Joint Committee that Ken's referred to as part of the proposed governance arrangement, there would be a number of advisory boards set up to work alongside the CCA committee. They would include a business board, so we're looking to establish that now with Torbay. It's something that we also need to do as part of the transition of the local enterprise partnership functions. We would be setting up an employment and skills board, a group to look at housing and a group to look at net zero. All of these absolutely are not intended to be new groups to sweep to one side existing arrangements that are perfectly working at a local level. Rather, we'd like to build on existing arrangements. The principles of partnership and additionality and inclusion are absolutely part of what you should have hopefully seen within the proposition and the devolution text. So we've still got an awful long way to go. Once we're through the consultation process, we begin a legislative set of procedures with government, but that also gives us the time and the space to work with Ken and the other chief execs across district councils and other stakeholders to design the constitution and to set up the CCA in a manner in which it supports and works for everybody, assuming that the green light is achieved at the end of the consultation period. So I'll pause there, Ken, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. So really, it's over to members to raise any issues, concerns that they may have. Any questions?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I've been around the block a few times in government, and I can't see what people are getting excited about. There's very little money, few powers, and promises of jam tomorrow. And I just don't see the point of an additional massive bureaucracy on top of the additional bureaucracy we already have. I mean, I'd be interested to find out what other Devon districts have used what this is, if anybody knows.
Councillor Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Kerry. Second time today for me and Kerry, right? I mean, I think, you know, as I think Councillor Petrinos is alluding to, we are, as a council, we have a lot of experience of working in partnership with other councils. You know, North Devon Plus that was mentioned earlier has come out from our work with Torridge District Council. You know, we have worked in partnership with other councils as and when things have come forward. So the principle of working together, I think, is something which is to be welcomed. But I have to say, I rather share the scepticism about what is this all about? Is it about more money? Possibly a bit. Is it about getting better service delivery? Well, there was a whole bunch of questions about that. But for me, I go back to the question about the governance, which is that I know it's set out in statute that it's upper level, but until fairly recently, the three upper level authorities were Devon County, Torbay, but also Plymouth. Now, Plymouth was withdrawn for whatever reasons. I mean, there's hearsay, but I won't repeat that here. So we've gone from 3 upper tiers down to 2. Okay. So we're left with Torbay and Devon, and I look at how that governance is going to work and how we get the best deal out of this that we can for Devon, because I have no doubt that this is going to go ahead, whatever we as districts actually say. I think it's a direction of travel for government, and I think whatever the colour of the next central government, I think they're all in favour of it. So I then come to, okay, so we've got Torbay. We've got Torbay with about 135,000 people who live there, and they've got their unitaries and they've got county and district functions. Then we look at Devon County, about 800,000 people, give or take, and they've got county functions, not district. And those two bodies will be putting the same number of people into the board to be basically the decision makers, and that those positions will rest with them, supported by a bunch of advisory groups and boards and so on and so forth. And I just actually wonder, is that the best that could be negotiated for Devon? Are we not underselling ourselves a bit? And then I move on a little bit to things like we're told it's devolution, it's not just an additional layer. Well, if it's a separate organisation with its own CEO and its own finance officer, and its own monitoring officer, and the expectation is it comes from the existing higher level authorities in the county combined authority area, where does that leave those organisations? Have we got spare capacity at that level? I mean, I'd be surprised if we were. And so it's a whole bunch of questions about equity and about how we get the best out of this. So my feeling is with this council, and I'd like to propose this, that we need to examine this in some more detail than I think we've probably got time for. So I'd like to propose that we refer it to Strategy Resources as soon as we possibly can. The consultation period is quite brief for such a big thing. It is quite brief, and I don't know if there's time to do that, but that's what I'd like to propose.
Councillor Reid, Councillor Bell. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I think the proposal is tonight, because otherwise we'll be here all night, is that we take on some of your comments that you're making, and also S&R meet on the 4th of March, and we'll use S&R to formulate the general response from the council, because there are some common themes. To answer Councillor Petrinos's themes in the Devon District Forum, there's some concerns around the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, for example, which we get directly given to us, and from that we support local businesses. And we would want to say that's a red line for districts. You know, we still want to retain that funding because that will go to CCAs. The other thing for me is around all the governance of this CCA. There'll be 3 members from Torbay and 3 members from Devon County. Equitably, the residents, as just been said, there's an imbalance. So therefore, every 2 years, Kerry, and every 2 years, I think the chair of the CCA alternates between Devon and Torbay. And therefore, if they want to come up with some wacky idea in Torbay and the chair gets the casting vote, then we'd be bound by it. And for me, that's not equitable for some areas in Devon, which we are much larger, and we don't have it. We're just having an equal say as Torbay would do. So for me, that is a big issue. And I know that there's these joint committees below, and I do know that a scrutiny committee is going to be set up as well. But as we know, I don't think the scrutiny committee has got any powers as it as existingly. Scrutiny can only call in and then say, please rethink this. I'm not sure if they can actually stop anything as a scrutiny committee. But also the other thing is around the housing. So I wrote down here that the greatest already districts have a relationship with Homes England. So I wouldn't want that relationship to just say Homes England then will just deal with the CCA, because it's taking the coalface expertise from our planners and our strategic district officers away. And I think that we need to still retain the partnership working with Homes England at a district level. I'm also urge all the parties to take advantage of the existing arrangements in place, such as the Devon Housing Task Force, to provide a platform for collaborative work and strategic planning. Paragraph 69 refers to the provision of affordable housing, regeneration and wider housing growth through the development of a shared development pipeline for the area. It's okay to agree that the pipeline should reflect strategic priorities across the whole of the CCA area, but district councils should be involved in decisions relating to that pipeline and the principles underpinning it. Clarity over whether decisions relating to the development of that pipeline are major investment decisions and therefore reserved to constituent councils should be provided. So yes, there's a lot of ambiguity in the proposals at the moment. I have great concerns about the governance, but I think the way forward from this to deal with this tonight, because we've got a big agenda, is this is open to us as a council to give a response to the consultation. So as it's already been proposed, I would second that any concerns from councillors, we get in touch with officers, i.e. we send them to BEV, member services, and we air our responses there, and then it's debated at SNR, which any council can attend at SNR as well, to formulate a structured response on the 4th of March, which will give us time to submit that response as a council, but also individual members or groups of members can also put their response into it as well. I think reading between the lines, it's a done deal, you know, and it's a tick box exercise to sort of go out to consultation. It's a statutory thing, but let's just see. Let's see if they do listen to our concerns, because I think the governance is a big area that concerns me about the equitability of Devon and Tovey in the amount of the population. But I would second the proposal that it's referred to SNR, and any councillor who's got concerns, please put them in an email to Ben so that we can formulate a response at the SNR committee, which any councillor who's not a member can also attend and do that. I'd second that.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. To answer Councillor Katrina, if I can, I have spoken to the housing leads and my counterparts across Devon. There's a consensus on pretty much what I'm going to say, and obviously I'm going to speak on housing, so I'm going to avoid repeating what Councillor Rims just said. Yes, Mid Devon, Exeter, everyone has had existing relationships with Homes England and other partners, and this does not make clear whether or not we will be able to continue with our brilliant partnerships. We've worked hard on places slowly, like the Lace Factory, Mid Devon, Exeter have all done partnerships with Homes England, and the rest have as well, I think. And we will now be working through the Devon and Tovey CCA in order to facilitate this. They don't have our experience, we have this experience. We can't be relying on Devon. The county council does a great job. I'm sure Tovey does a great job too down there, but we'll be relying on them when we're trying to talk to Homes England. That's the level of bureaucracy we just do not need at the moment. This all goes back to paragraph 67. I would also like to just touch on CLTs and homelessness, which are referred to. Again, I'm sorry, I have concentrated on housing. CLTs and homelessness, there are adventurous plans to do something in the future, according to the things. North Devon has the best CLTs in Devon. We have done very, very good work with CLTs, and that's been recognised across the region. We also have, and I'm going to quickly make a reference to congratulate Tash Rowland from the Freedom Centre, who has been nominated for a prestigious national award. We have the best. We are ashamed that we have any homelessness. That happens across the entire world, but we have the best nationally provision, certainly for the size of our council. Brilliant homelessness support, and we are expected to hand over to Devon and Torbay, CCA, this nebulous thing that they may be doing something with respect to our county councillors. We've recently seen difficulties over funding homelessness service, which we are grateful to the county council for reversing their decision and providing funding to homelessness. But I would argue, I would go on about the fact that we need a fair model funding for homelessness. We don't have that, but this just adds more jeopardy, more risk into homelessness, while the £16 million is certainly, I wouldn't say no. I would say there are things on this that are welcome, but as Councillor Rich just said, we have 3 Torbay councillors or 3 Torbay committee members, 3 from Devon County Council, who will of course be representing everyone. We have 2 non-voting district councils, who I think will be initially Sidmouth and East Devon. Thank you, East Devon. And of course, the risk is any non-voting member can be given voting powers if Torbay agree to it. The best way to get Torbay to agree to something is to agree with Torbay. This is a risk. I would say we definitely have to take this back to SNR. I would say that while it's a statutory requirement that this is a statutory requirement. We have to have 3 from Torbay, 3 from Devon, the rest random. And initially it was going to be 2 from Plymouth. Of course, they pulled out for their reasons, which I think we all know. That might work in other parts of the country. It would not work in Devon. It would be completely undemocratic. It would be unequal. And we can't work in that way. We have to go back and say, yes, this is a sort of good proposal. I disagree that it's a done deal. It's a deal and it's on the table, but we have to go back and say, to make this work, we have to have something that is democratic representative of the entire coast-to-coast Devon.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
I'll just be very brief because I read the leaflet, I read the report, I've listened to everybody talking, and I'm still very confused. I don't really understand. I think this is a simple question. What are the actual tangible benefits for North Devon? We've seen the government levelling up, which I'm quickly understanding actually means levelling down. And I welcome that this is going to be looked at in much more detail by councillors that have a much deeper understanding of what the actual impact for us is going to be in North Devon. I understand that at strategy and resources, arguably that Malcolm brought up the point that this needs to come back, and I'm really happy to hear that you guys are supporting that proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Bushnell.
I think this is a first for me. I've stayed quiet. I'm talking last. I agree with the points made by every single councillor here. And I may have got the wrong end of the stick here, but I'm going to make this very simple because I think the very in-depth points have been made very well. And Councillor Bell, I gave you a round of applause because you needed it. You did a very good job of explaining one specific area that we're very good at, that we're likely to lose and will harm our people. And we're here for our people. And I'm going to err on the side of caution, but I've been a councillor for lots of years, a good portion of my life. And for years we were talking about the Heart of the Southwest bid, which everyone lost interest in because it very quickly became a Golden Triangle bid where Exeter, Plymouth and Torbay rallied together to try and get all the money for their area. I don't believe in this document, which is after a discursive analysis. I think for North Devon it's not true. It said they're going to strengthen their joined up approach towards local transport. We can't even get connecting bus services from South Molton to Barnstable and the towns around it. So it may be really good down in Torbay and Exeter. You may have good transport, and that's why nobody's noticed that it's rubbish up here. It's also said that there's going to be strategic transport that supports economic growth. Well, the data shows that poor roads make poor economic growth. We've seen all the money being sent down to Torbay and fixing their roads, not fixing our roads up this way. And we didn't win our bid for Ilfracombe, which apparently wasn't at risk enough for the government to send money here. So if this is a replacement for the Heart of the South West bid, which I'm getting the feeling that it is, we've also going to allow Devon County, which I don't think sees North Devon as a full party to the area. I don't think we get our fair deal of funding for roads and everything else that they look at. They get 3 votes. Torbay gets 3 votes. Oh, well, that's a veto to anything that we want to do in North Devon. So they might give us some crumbs, but they really, it doesn't seem like this voting system is democratic. Two district council votes on the panel. Well, there are more than 2 district councils, so that doesn't seem fair. So to me, this feels like a covert step towards a unitary authority, which our MP has already said that she thinks is a really great idea, and I'm happy to see the details of that, to see if we're going to get hammered again by the pushing of a unitary authority. But I think there's a track record where North Devon doesn't do well from government, doesn't do well from county council, and I don't think it's going to do well out this half of the way from this bid, especially as the leaflet doesn't reflect how North Devon is treated. So maybe I'm erring on the side of caution by coming from the standpoint, although I haven't decided, that this could be a bad idea. Maybe I'm being risk averse because I don't want our people to suffer, because that's why we're here. We're not here for ourselves, we're here for our people, we're here to represent the people who can't be here. And I'd like to make an amendment to the proposal that has been seconded on the table, because I think this is a huge decision, and we don't have time in this meeting tonight, but I do think that every councillor should get a vote on how this council moves forward with its responses. So I'm going to suggest that SNR look at this. They form a lot of ideas. They form ideas for debate, and then we have an extraordinary council meeting, which is in an evening, so the people who are working can still go to the meeting, and each councillor gets their vote if they turn up to that meeting. Because this really scares me. I think this is the most scared I've been, and we've had some really, really hard financial decisions to make. And some of those worry me. Our financial officer would have said how much time he talked through things like green lanes, so I could stack up whether the borrowing was worth the return on the investment. And that turned out to be a really good thing. But we don't have enough input in this. District councils don't have enough input in this. So I don't think I would like to see Torbay and Exeter, 2 parts of the Golden Triangle, be able to veto things happening in North Devon or Northern Devon, because we do a lot of things very good. We haven't cut services like DCC. We haven't burdened the council taxpayer in the same way that bad decisions, in my opinion, like selling off the nursing homes that happened at DCC, which I believe has caused them to ramp up the elderly care budgets. So I think that we need to stop. We need to start again from scratch, because it was years in the making for the Heart of the South West bid to happen. And I believe that they scrapped the idea of having a mayor. And now, slid in the side door, we're going to have a mayor. Just like the districts and the parish councils who fed into that Heart of the South West said they didn't want a mayor because it's one person in control of it. And I bet you it'd be somebody from South Devon. Those are my things, and I have my amendment on the table. This goes to SNR, and then we have we have an extraordinary full council meeting following that, so all councillors can discuss, all councillors can vote.
Right, thank you. Right, also, first of all, I need a seconder on that, please. Thank you. I've got 3 more people on my list to speak, and then Ken, you come back on a few of the queries that have been raised. I've got Councillor Prowse next.
Chairman, can I say I support the idea that this should go to strategy. I think that is the right place to go. And the reason I do it is that I think this prospectus is very light on the needs of Northern Devon. And I think we should be looking at strategy to put some meat on a bid that goes forward, because I think we've heard that this is going to go ahead probably anyway. But if that is the case, then we need to have a prospectus of our own in our back pocket to put into the process. Chair, what worries me about this document is it talks about, I think it's in the 5th paragraph, that this area is a coherent economic area. No, it's not. No, it's not. We all know that. We know that Devon is made up of different economic areas. So I'm worried about that sort of statement. The other thing is, when we did the local plan, we looked at our housing market and we realised that part of our housing market was not just North Devon and Torridge, it was bits of North Cornwall and bits of West Somerset. That ability to look across borders and make flexible partnerships that suit people's needs is what I'd love to see back in local government. Matt said he'd been around for a while. Well, I've been around for a while too. And when we actually had regional bodies that allowed that flexibility to work across county boundaries and choose your partners for different jobs, what a better world it was. They were scrapped because of Tory dogma, because they were the Labour Party's idea. So they got rid of everything that was regional was gone. We end up with a separate authority for Cornwall, even though the rest of us in the rest of the South West had supported the Cornish people in their bid for European funds and government funds for decades. So we end up with losing Cornwall, and we end up with North Devon and Torridge with probably the worst wage levels, the least affordable housing of anywhere in the South West. So, Chair, I am sceptical because the document talks about explore additional solutions subject to a business case, recognises the need, considering the role, and confirms its intention. Those are all words that don't mean very much to me. So I would support the idea that it goes to strategy, because I think strategy committee should put together some bullet points, 5 or 6 points, and say, this is our conditional support. If that's the way that strategy agree in the end, because I'm a realist, and I hear what Matt said. I've been heard to say this for the last few weeks, that I think this is a bit on the slippery slope towards a unitary county, and it worries me, because we know Torbay is struggling to be viable and always has been since it was established. It was never actually one of the options that were consulted on in Devon, but I popped Torbay. North Devon Plus is something that we should be cherished. You know, it's a delivery body that's close to the people. What it's been doing in agriculture these last few months is outstanding, and that's because it's local. So we've already heard about the post-Brexit funding. That must be kept at local level to be effective, because otherwise it's going to be top sliced and it'll go to big bids in parts that haven't got the same priorities in North Devon. So, Chair, I would support, and I did actually suggest yesterday it goes to strategy rather than trying to debate it tonight. I'm an agnostic. I've yet to be convinced. But what I want to do is make sure I've got an insurance policy in my back pocket that looks after the interests of North Devon, rather than just standing on the principle of opposing it. But I say I'm very doubtful about the proposal having the benefits for the people of North Devon. That's why we're elected. But I would support it going to strategy, and I think between us, I mean, we talked a bit about it in the independent group last night. I think between us, we can feed things in. We as a group have got nearly half our members on the strategy committee, so four of us. So hopefully we can feed in through the portfolio holders and the other people on strategy chair. So I would support that proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair, and I won't speak really, but I've got triggered as we go along. Malcolm, I was a bit upset really, because Malcolm clearly went to the group leaders meeting and suggested that this was the route forward and spot on, but we've seen what's happened, but fair enough. But let's be honest about it, this is a gimmick. This is government regurgitating money, another opportunity to talk about Devon and up Devon. 150 million a year has been stripped out of Devon since 2010, every single year, and we're talking about 16 million. And the bit, I support everything Malcolm said and the leader and others, but this, we own it with the Police Crime Commissioner, didn't we? We suddenly got this Police Crime Commissioner given to us, I don't know how long ago it was now, and it wasn't going to cost a lot, it was going to be easy. I mean, I was looking the other day, and I believe our office now costs about £5 million a year to run. I think the people of Devon and Cornwall would rather see 100+ police officers than the Police Crime Commissioner's office, and it's not just this one, it's every single one across the country, and I think this is exactly what we're going to end up with here, is a situation where, we already look at it and we're going to have a authority with the and it's going to have an overview and scrutiny committee that will need officer support. It's going to have an audit committee that will need officer support. It's going to have a CCE advisory board that will need officer support. Very quickly, this 16 million that's been mooted, a vast percentage of it is likely to get swallowed up by governance. And we've already got, as Malcolm said, we've already got all the governance structures we need. We've got everything we need to deliver services. It's just to me, it's just the government to come out and say, "Oh, we're doing this for Devon, we're doing this for Devon," and the reality is that 150 million a year is gone. If we had that, and we knew we had the security of that, we could be spending money a lot wiser and a lot more. We wouldn't have roads broken up all over the place, and closing every service that we can possibly think of, from youth services through to mobile motorway services, etc. So I think, Kerry, you've obviously worked very, very hard on this, and as a probably district, you like Ken on the districts, and we appreciate the work you put in. But last year we got £6 million worth of pothole funding, sent down from Devon, and we were supposed to be forever thankful. How much of that 6 million ended up in North Devon? I think the closest it got to North Devon is a tiny bit of Kings Lynton. And I include all of Torridge in that. There was somebody suggesting we took a bus down to South Devon to see all the lovely shiny roads. I won't mention it by name, but that's how we feel in North Devon, and I think, as has already been explained, this is a charter of Torbay with 1/6 of the population, while the other 5/6, come and beg, and you can go on the scrutiny committee or you can go on the audit committee, sing and dance all you like, but we're going to do what you tell us to do. And so I think that's where my scepticism is. But I fear my leader, who's always the voice of reason, is probably right. We're going to have to be a bit more positive than that and toe the line, because the reality is it'll be done to us, sod what we think. So I think, absolutely, and I apologise now, but I think the right way is to take the strategy and resources. It's cross-party. You'll be able to have a proper look at it and probably put a much better slant on it than I have tonight, because I just get angrier and angrier every time I hear MPs and ministers jumping up and down telling us how wonderful they are, when the reality is very, very different. Somebody said it, we've been levelled down, we ain't been levelled up. Thank you.
That's so nice. That's so nice.
Sorry, I didn't realise you'd seen my hand, but
Yes,
you did
you
that.
might be keeping away there, but I did see you.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to all these comments, and yes, Malcolm, and we've all been around that's one of the problems with this council. We've all been around the block for too long. At least I've been around the block on the outside looking in. And I must admit, I've never been able to understand why Torbay existed in the first place, other than some sort of covert pressure.
The town will help.
Oh, it's kind of didn't seem to make financial sense. I sure it made strategic sense. But I have, since you are going to answer some questions again, I suppose I've got to ask a direct question. You alluded to everybody knowing why Plymouth have pulled out. Well, I don't know. There we are. That's part of the problem, isn't it? Is there a problem financially with Torbay Council? Are they being bribed, if you like, with government money? The whole thing reminds me of the way in which powers that be imposed academic academies on our education system locally. The the offer was either you become an academy, or you don't get your £2 million, £3 million and you have to sack staff. That's what it seems to me as being. Did we get all this staying as we are, as a status quo? What specifically is Plymouth not in trouble? Is Torbay in trouble financially? Is that what's driving this? More money for Devon, certainly won't be more for North Devon. There we are. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, are you going to say, sorry, I'm not being rude, are you going to say anything different? It's just I want Ken to come back on a lot of these comments.
I'll be very, very quick. I'd like to make an amendment. I appreciate that there is the feeling of bringing it back to full council, having a separate meeting brings costs and brings time. But I think it's really, really important that we have a good understanding of this, and that individually we have the right to.
Got an emotion on the table of an amendment already.
I'd like to make another amendment, to make a different amendment, and that amendment is that it doesn't come back to a separate meeting, but it comes back to the next full council, so that everybody has the opportunity to vote on it.
You're too late.
We've got 2 days.
Thank
2
you.
days. Madam Chair, I've just spoken to my seconder. We are happy to take that on board as our amendment. Okay, we'll have an extraordinary then. Thank you.
Yeah, just come.
Sorry,
Chuck.
you just said this, sorry.
I said my amendment stands there.
Thank you.
If I could just come back on a couple of points, and I don't want to prolong the debate that we're not having tonight, that we're going to have at Strashing. And Kerry may well come back on a couple of points as well, but just a few things going into Strashing Resources or full council, whatever's decided, that I think some thoughts that members ought to have. The first thing was there were lots of comments about this being a done deal. Whatever your thoughts about whether this will go through or not, the consultation that's currently being conducted does have great value, because Devon County Council, Torbay, will listen to those comments, take them on board when they're shaping the constitution of the CCA. So if you've got concerns about, voting and all the rest of it, then yeah, we should be expressing that, because Devon County Council and the people that are setting up the CCA will take those on board as part of the constitution. Comment was made about homelessness being handed over to the CCA. It's not. Homelessness stays with us. The principles behind this are that no powers from district councils are being passed to the CCA.
Yeah.
The only existing powers that currently sit with the county council or the district council that are going to the CCA are the transport powers that Kerry talked about. Everything else stays exactly as it is. And all the extra bits are bits that are coming from central government. So please don't go into it thinking that we are losing powers. We are not under this arrangement. There was a question about what are the tangible benefits to North Devon. Like I said, you might not be excited by what's in this document, but what's in this document represents new stuff come into the CCA, come into the local level. And the alternative, if you like, is that we fight our corner and continue to fight our corner in Whitehall. This arrangement allows us to fight our corner at a local level, at the CCA level. And to me, that's more of an advantage, because we've all, you've expressed some frustrations already tonight about how you get traction through Whitehall. And it is difficult. It's really hard work. My preference would be to fight our corner locally rather than nationally. And that's what the CCA will provide us with. I think reference was made to having a mayor. There isn't going to be a mayor. At the outset of this process, the government gave a number of options, and it was almost like a shopping list, if you like, of powers that could come down to us. And the most extensive powers that could come down to us would be to the areas which adopt the mayoral arrangement. We have decided not to do that. So this does not impose a mayor, and it's not intended to do so in the future either. There were a couple of questions, direct questions. Can we get this staying as we are? No, is the short answer in my view, because the legislation will not pass those powers down to district councils, and they won't pass the powers down to a county council. They will pass the powers down to a county combined authority. So if we don't set up the county combined authority, we won't get those powers. The other question was around Torbay and their financial arrangements. And I'm going to sit on the fence on that one. I've not seen their budgets, so I'm not going to pass comment on their financial arrangements. I don't know if Kerry wants to pick up any other points, but obviously there are a great deal of concerns. And going back to, I think it was Councillor Room, the leader, said, please address those to officers, and we'll try and pick those up as part of the presentation at Strategy and Resources. I'll urge you to do that if you can. Kerry, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I'll just add a couple of extras to your list, which I also noted. So there was a question or a comment around the rotation of the chair and a casting vote. There isn't a casting vote that the chair has. So if something doesn't have enough votes to get passed, the status quo remains. But we can absolutely explore the constitution at the next stages and hopefully do some more reassurance for members. There was reference to the Devon and Torbay Housing Task Force, and I think what was said was there was an inference that wasn't going to be part of a CCA arrangement or such going forward. On the contrary, I mentioned that one of the advisory boards that we'd like to set up around housing could actually be the same Devon Housing Task Force, which is obviously chaired by the district councils, and you are and you will remain the housing authorities. That duty doesn't change. As Ken says, that there is no loss except for there's some of the transport powers at the two unitary levels. The point about the relationship with Homes England and district authorities having that and the expertise, absolutely, of course you do. And, you know, you do a damn good job with the small amounts of funding that you receive. The CCA would not be interfering with that. Rather, it would want to work at that national level, doing that influencing job for the whole area to get more bang for its buck as a collective, as a unified voice, with that commitment from Homes England to develop a joint action plan for the whole area and an investment pipeline. That money wouldn't be stopped from coming down to the district level. So it's basically the housing element would be worked at by district colleagues with the benefit of that added engagement with government. I think there was reference as well to 16 million, being used as a cost to set up another layer similar to the Police and Crime Commission. The 16 million is capital. It's a one-off sum of capital, and that isn't therefore going to be used to set up any of the structures or the bureaucracy. The CCA has been offered, assuming it goes forward, £1 million over the next 3 years to help do the mobilisation of it, which is an additional money. So it's not using up the 16 million, if that reassures on that. Some of the other points absolutely are understood. I've listened, I've made notes, but this, to repeat what Ken has said, is your opportunity to put all your thoughts, feelings, views, concerns into your consultation response, and it absolutely will be heard and listened to. And part of what has to happen after the consultation closes is Devon, Torbay, with yourselves, the districts, recognised as part of that, we have to provide a summary of the consultation into government, and not just talk about what you said, but what our response is to what you have said, and that would ultimately be placed in the public domain. So there'll be openness and transparency in the way the consultation findings are shared.
Yeah, really quick question. With the 1 million, Kerry, thank you for that. Did I hear that right? Is it 1 million per year or 1 million over 3 years?
1 million over 3 years. I think they're staggering it to us. So I might get this wrong, Frank, so don't hold me to it, but I think we get 250,000 this financial year, 500,000 the following year, and 250 the final year.
And do you think that will need topping up? 'Cause I mean, that doesn't seem a lot of money for all the officers that we need.
So that's to mobilise and set ourselves up. Then there would be some of the central costs that come down. So the administration of the adult education budget would need to come with an overhead amount of money. And then any other funding that is received by us, as we would currently do, it would be potentially a small amount would be top sliced to support the CCA. There was mention earlier about additional officers as well. The intention would be that whilst it's a separate corporate body, that there is a shared resource by the upper tiers and indeed the district authorities, if you wish to engage in that, to make sure it's as streamlined as possible. As I said earlier, one of the principles is to add value, not to overlap and duplicate. So we want to make this as streamlined as possible. We simply don't have all of the answers yet. We've not worked through structures, we've not worked through a budget. That's all to come, and through Team Devon, absolutely there would be full sight and engagement from yourselves and other district authorities as part of that process.
Thank you. Kerry's answered my question there. Kerry, my question was going to be, is how much extra would it cost in governance arrangements, whether that's shared roles and things like that? In other words, will it have its own new chief exec, or will we just have the two, Donna Manson and the other one? Or will it have its own monitoring officer or not, or will that be shared? Just basically the costs to the taxpayer, really. Anymore, that's all.
Yeah, really fab questions. Our initial position is that they would be shared responsibilities and roles to minimise the cost to the taxpayer. That may well be what we do as a shadow set of arrangements until we're fully up and established. And when I say we, that's everybody, that's yourselves included. And what staffing and complements we need to have and how that gets funded is all to be worked through in the coming months. It is a separate body though, it is a separate entity. So there has to be some management conflict where we do look at sharing those roles and sharing those posts.
And then Councillor Bell.
Could I just say to finish off with you, Kerry, could you just give members, because obviously a lot of members are new to this and they haven't been in meetings like I have, just a anticipated timeline going forward to a consultation ends on what day, and then what's the next procedures going forward?
Yes, of course. So the consultation is there until the 24th of March. There is then a 3-week period or so where we look at all of the consultation feedback, provide that summary and a report to go to our cabinet and on to full council, and obviously the same is true for Torbay, where we will make the decision to accept the offer or not. There is also part of that a delegated decision to accept the statutory legislative regulation, which will have to come later. Once we've completed that process and submitted that into government, assuming we pass muster, then the statutory instrument, so the legislative part happens, and that will hopefully begin before summer recess, which is the 23rd of July from memory. That's laid in Parliament in the normal way, and so it's properly debated in the House and through the House of Lords, and then that flows through into September. And then, assuming it all goes well, a final decision is taken by Parliament, and the CCA should be stood up around October, beginning of November. Obviously, there could be a general election during that process, and there would be the normal wash up of one government's business, which our legislation would probably be considered in as part of that. But that is something that we're obviously uncertain of a little as our government. We had that very conversation with them today in terms of the part they have to play as we move forward post consultation.
I'm sure Councillor Ring would want to apologise to Donna's colleague for being referred to as the other one. I just wanted to clarify my point on homelessness, if you don't mind. It wasn't that there's going to be any changes, it was that the document that we have is very vague and just refers to explore additional solutions. That means nothing except potentially we have a possibility of, you've said yourself that we are looking at first plan, first steps. So this is the initial proposal. Exploring additional solutions means nothing, but it potentially could mean changes to the way we do things at the moment, and that was my big fear. My other very quick question coming up from what Kerry just said, if you don't mind, and I will be very fast. As we've said, there's a massive disparity. Torbay is relatively small. It would have been the smallest district in Devon, excluding the cities. It's tiny. It has a small population, only a little bit bigger than North Devon, certainly smaller than North Devon and Torridges. This disparity of 3 and 3 with non-voting members added in, has this gone through anywhere else? I mean, it seems ridiculous. It seems that although it's legislative, and that's the reason it happens, the government surely would look at this and say that is unfair. Has this happened anywhere where you've had a population of 130,000, a population of 800,000 with such a disparity going on? And has this been approved as a CCA in another part of the country? Thank you. Go on.
Ken, do you want me to answer that? That's a question.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act was done after considerable amount of debate and discussion in the House of Lords about the voting rights, and I think it went back twice on the basis that the House of Lords were recommending that district councils were more involved than just upper tier authorities, but the Act was passed as it currently stands. So that is true for all parts of the country. About 60% of the English population is now covered under a devolution arrangement, and it applies to that 60% the same as it would as we move forward. And your other question about homelessness and other options, it's important to have markers in this proposal from government, because it means that they will then engage and have conversations with us. And when I say us, that includes yourselves, Team Devon. So it's absolutely not about taking away powers, as Ken and I have both relayed. This is just not what is anticipated, or indeed what's been written. So that would provide ultimately a hook to influence and lobby government to do more. And I think you were the one that made the point about the considerable lack of funding to address homelessness. So let's have that conversation with government directly and look at alternative options, but within the guise of it's additional, not instead of.
Right, before we take the vote, Councillor Bushell, and this needs to be the smallest you've ever spoken.
This is going to be tiny because there's a lot of knowledge in the room. Has anyone ever seen government move this quickly before?
No.
Does that scare anyone? Does it seem like this is a stepping stone to their next step? Like it's been lined up. We spent a decade talking about the North South West, and in 6 months or less, we're suddenly going to have this round through into all the legislation. This scares me. This seems like there's been a script being run, and there is a bigger plan that we are going to find out what it is, whether we like it or not, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got 2 things on the table. We've got one, it just goes to S&R and the date before.
Yeah, that's the original motion, and the amendment
is that it comes back to an extraordinary one after S&R.
Yeah.
So we'll take the amendment first, please. We've had a mover and a seconder. All in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Chair.
Anyone against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22.
That's carried. Thank you. Right, now we'll take that just goes to S&R and I deal with it. All in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you all very much. And Ken, I'll pick it up with you at another occasion. What happens next?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Item 12. Questions by members. Questions to the leader or the chair of the committee submitted under page part 4, council procedure rules, paragraph 10.4, business division, then received. Item 13. I'll just wait till everyone's had their conversations. Item 13, performance and financial management. Question, Q3, 2023-20, pages 61 to 122, report by the Director of Resources and Deputy Chief Executive to the Strategy Resources Committee on the 6th of February 2024. And I'll hand it up to you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you've had the report on your agenda and the appendices. The report's been through both strategy and resources and policy development. So I'm not planning to take you through the detail of the report, but happy to take any questions if any members have them.
We thought it was in here anyway, because that's my that's on the question on that. So right, so any questions on the report on item A or B? No. So we've got item A, report to the Policy Development Committee, published as a supplementary document on moving the Councillor Spear to report.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we receive the report of the Policy Development Committee held on the 12th of February 24, Chair.
Thank you. And item B, report of meeting of the Strategy and Resources Committee, pages 123 to 124, and to receive the report held on 5th of February 2024, Councillor Room to report.
To receive the said report that you just mentioned, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you. To adopt the recommendations of the committee and everyone vote, please. All in favour? I lost my train of thought then. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 14, fees and charges 2024-25, pages 125 to 196, report by the Director of Resources and Deputy Chief Executive of the Strategy and Resources Committee, 5th of February 2024. John, over to you for an update, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, members, this report's been through both strategy, resources and policy development, setting out the proposed variations to fees and charges for 24-25. I do just have one update to refer you to regarding Appendix E on page 170, which the original report that went through strategy and resources and policy development set out the proposed fees for food, health and safety. There were fees set out on that paper for export health certificates of £125 per certification and £125 for revision of certification. Those fees are as in the report still. However, the original report omitted the proposed fees that we were setting for non-EU certificates for China and non-standard fees for Vietnam and Korea. This is for export health certificates. So the proposed fees are in your updated report on page 170 of £70 per certification and revision of certification for non-EU certificates for China, and £35 per certification and revision of certification for the non-standard applications. So those fees were previously charged in your fees previously, but were not in the report that came to Strategy and Resources and Policy Development. So it's just to update you that they're in the final report here this evening for your approval. And subject to that, Chair, then it's over to members for any questions and also to receive the recommendations under item A for the Harbour Charges Review from the Harbour Board Chair, and also then over to the Chair of Policy and Strategy.
Thank you. Any questions?
Chair, so I move the parts under Part A, please. This was done in consultation with all the harbour users. The two standards of fees of 5%, 10%, these were done, as I said, after consultation. They are still amongst the cheapest in the Southwest.
Thank you very much. And item B, Councillor Spear.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we receive a report of the Policy Development Committee held on the 12th of February 2024.
Thank you. And item C, Councillor Rooney.
Mr. Lord Chair, to receive the report of the Strategy and Resources Committee on the 5th of February 2024.
Thank you. Could I have a mover for all three reports, please? Have a second
Can I
down.
ask a question, Chair?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Petrino.
On page 195, it talks about the section 106 fees, new fees. And I know that was raised at the policy committee meeting about clarification of when it was fine, when it might not be fine. Am I right in assuming that that will be included in the way that it's the clarification that was given afterwards was that it wouldn't apply to most the big ones?
Correct, yeah. So the discussion we had at Policy Development Committee was around the variations to Section 106 agreements, of which we're now getting a number coming through. And the clarification was around, does it relate to all Section 106 agreements or is it those on major housing applications, i.e. 10 plus dwellings? So clarification from the service manager planning is that it would be for only those larger applications of 10 plus dwellings. And also equally, if the variation for 106 was, for example, to amend definitions for terminology or triggers in the 106 agreement, which would be for less work, then again that fee would not be charged. So again, it's only for those larger developments of 10 plus houses.
Thank you. Okay, we have a mover, a seconder. Oh, right, I need a seconder, sorry. Thank you. Right, all in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 15, Revenue Budget 2024-25, Capital Programme Meeting, Term Financial Strategy 24-25 to 29-30, pages 201 to 236. Over to you, John. Councillor Walker, I apologise for missing that. Councillor Walker.
Okay, I would just like to introduce you to some of the budget highlights for the 24-25 year. This council has a legal duty to provide a balanced budget. We've managed to do this despite unforeseen pressure on budgets due to a higher than expected pay award, the ever decreasing in real terms grant from central government, and like everybody else, the pressures caused by unexpected high inflation. The budget process started last summer with a cross-party workshop in the autumn. This is crucial to address the financial challenges moving forward. We as a council have responded to the government consultation on grants. Rural authorities are still in poor relations to urban authorities. Urban councils will receive an average of 30%, 37%, that equates to £142 per head compared to rural authorities in relation to government funded spending power. As a result, rural councils have had to increase council tax to balance the books. On average, residents in rural authorities will now pay 20% more, about £113 in council tax per head compared to those in urban areas. The decision to buy Green Lanes Shopping Centre in 2021 is continuing to show a good, positive return, whilst protecting a strategic asset in the town. We've been fortunate that the old Wilko store was replaced quickly by the Poundland, and that spare space has been used for pop-up shops, both whilst the market was being restored and in lead up to Christmas. A council hub within the centre will enhance our customer service interface, utilising a unit that is hard to let due to its awkward shape and size. The hub will provide face-to-face council services in an easy-to-reach space that is fully accessible to all, with good bus links and parking. The hub will be offered to other organisations who also wish to have an accessible town centre presence. We have allocated £200,000 to an earmark reserve to enable the continuation of the much valued street marshals. This will continue our funding, which this council continued after that provided by the Safer Streets Fund ended. Our homelessness service is under extreme pressure. Providing temporary accommodation has doubled in cost since 2020 due to pressure and availability of housing. Buying our own properties for temporary housing is mitigating some of the pressure, but not enough to avoid the need to buy an extra. There have been times this year when we've had over 70 units of housing in use for homeless provision. The uncertainty of the fair funding review, which we're now predicting will be in 2 years' time, makes planning the medium-term financial strategy challenging. All members need to address this in the short term to medium term to tackle the challenges we face. And it doesn't matter what party we belong to, we need to face this as a council. I would like to congratulate John and his team for producing a budget in difficult financial circumstances. Not only are we not cutting services, we are in fact increasing them. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Member. Members, I've got a couple of slides for you. You'll be pleased to know not as many as normal. Just to cover the key headlines within the budget papers in front of you. You've got a number of pages, a number of appendices. I'm just going to take you through those main headlines and the main appendices. And just cover off some of the key pertinent points. I think the challenges, as Councillor Walker set out, are not just for North Devon Council. Obviously, as you can see from headlines throughout the country, all councils are struggling financially and in order to balance their books. Some councils actually have made representations to government to put council tax up by significant rises. You were pleased to see that we have managed to balance our budget and also put forward a recommendation that is below 3% on the council tax from North Devon Council. The provisional settlement was announced just before Christmas. I'm just going to talk around some of the context of that national picture before we get into the local figures. Government did announce some additional funding through the final settlement that was announced 2 weeks ago. Some £500 million worth of additional funding for social care. That goes into the upper tier authorities and also doesn't benefit the district council. And a further £100 million worth of funding nationally that has increased funding for the Rural Services Delivery Grant and also the Funding Guarantee Grant. But I'll talk through those differences in terms of that additional funding that has come through. In terms of the backdrop, before we get into the budget for next year, the important thing is that you've got a sound financial position moving forwards, and you'll recall that you approved the statement of accounts for 22-23 financial year recently. So that gives you confidence that your reserves and your balances moving into 24-25 represent and have been signed off by the auditors. Some councils obviously haven't got that luxury. They haven't had their accounts signed off for last year or maybe the previous couple of financial years. So at least you can take that reassurance that you're starting the position for next year's budget with a sound financial position. The Q3 report that you alluded to earlier is forecasting a balanced budget position for 23-24 with a small net surplus, and also you are putting some money back into reserves, most notably the one you referred to, in order to maintain services and actually continue with the much valued street marshal scheme into 24-25 and 25-26. The provisional settlement that came out just before Christmas touched on a core spending power. Nationally for England, that was 6.5%. That varies depending on what type of council you are. For Shire District Councils, you can see that from here, nationally is 4.9%, not 6.5% in terms of the overall funding settlement for core spending power for all councils. So it does vary depending on what type of council you are. That also varies depending on region as well. So for the Southwest, it was actually less than 4.9%. For North Devon Council, it actually equated to 4.7%. Slightly less than the national picture for Shire District Councils. The additional funding that government announced in the final settlement has increased those percentages by around 1%. The difference between the national picture and Shire District Councils is still the same difference, just increase those numbers by 1% across the board. In terms of the announcements in the draft settlement announced in December, the announcements were that for council tax, Shire District Councils such as ourselves could increase council tax up to a limit of 3% and £5, whichever is the highest. Draft budget in front of you this evening assumes an increase of 2.99%, which is an increase of £6.11 on the Band B council tax from North Devon Council. That will produce an overall council tax increased income of 287,000, of which 214,000 comes from the 2.99% increase. The remaining 73,000 comes from the increase in the council tax base, which is the number of average properties that you approved at your last full council meeting. In terms of business rates, the council is allowed to retain business rate growth. We are allowed to retain 50% of any business rate growth that's been achieved since 2013. That is the level of risk that we have moving forward in terms of the fair funding settlement, in that business rate growth is going to be reset and redistributed across the sector. Retained growth built into your budget for next year is £3 million. That's made up of £2 million worth of general growth in rateable values. Renewable energy schemes are just under £700,000, where we get to keep 100% of growth, and also we're part of a Devon-wide pool where we get to retain a benefit of growth throughout the wider county, and that's around 325,000. The other financial settlements talked about our government grants. The draft settlement in December, we received an additional 119,000 in our core funding in revenue support grants and baseline funding for business rates. The level of rural services grants at December's draft settlement was the same as the previous year. New homes bonus award of 351,000, which was around 97,000 less than the previous year. A services grant of 19,000, which was some 102,000 less than 23-24. And then the government announced a 3% funding guarantee that, depending on whether some of your grants went up or went down, overall funding would go up by around 3% as a funding guarantee. That increased our funding by 282,000 to 1.4 million. Adding all those together gave the council an additional net impact of additional £202,000 worth of extra government grant funding. Just to put that into context, if we look at the increase in terms of pay awards for staff over the past couple of years, they averaged around 6 to 7% and added a further £500,000 per year onto the staff pay bill over and above what we'd originally budgeted. So an extra £202,000 is welcome, but obviously it doesn't go that far in terms of covering the increased costs that the council has seen over 23-24 and into 24-25. As part of the draft finance settlement, the government announced a consultation that ran for a month up until the 15th of January, and this council did respond to that consultation, as we talked about at the last council meeting in January, and a copy of that is in your papers this evening in Appendix F on pages 233 to 236.
No more slide.
I wish it would have been three, Malcolm, didn't I? Jeff, what you wish for, Malcolm? The
Do you want to read your say stop.
I know, what's the one? What's that one? Yeah.
6 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. So the final settlement was announced on the 5th of February. In terms of the differences, the revenue support grant stayed the same. The rural services grant actually went up by a further 57,000. The new homes bonus award stayed the same. The services grant went up by £2,000, 21,000, and we got about an extra 70,000 on the 3% funding guarantee. Overall, the difference from the previous 202,000 was an overall net impact of 333,000. So that's an extra 131,000 compared to the draft settlements that came out in December. The original draft budget that went to Strategy and Resources and Policy Development Committee was originally looking to utilise £75,000 from the Budget Management Reserve. So the final draft budget in front of you this evening for approval, because of the additional funding, no longer has that reliance on using the Budget Management Reserve. So that's actually a positive move moving into next year's budget, that you're not now using a general reserve to fund the budget. The additional 50,000 or just over 50,000 has also been reinvested back into services and additional investment into our planning services.
Don't press the arrow on the keyboard now.
There we go. So it's just a bit of a delay. The draft budget table is in your papers this evening. So within your draft report, it just sets out how we've moved from the medium-term financial gap that we talked about at November 23 when we had the budget workshop with yourselves. The top part of the table talks about some of the increased pressures that we saw in terms of setting the budget around that higher impact from the pay award, the slight delay in phasing some of the transfers of the public conveniences over to town and parish councils, We've seen some increase in our external audit fees, some increases in our insurance and utility costs, some reduced income from our core parking service, and then the government funding coming in, which has now been adjusted with the additional funding that has come through as part of the final settlement. That still left us with a revised budget gap of around 900,000. We've challenged that draft budget and reduced that by around 300,000 on the draft budget proposals by looking at some of the things that we built into the budget around our treasury investments. We then also looked at additional growth in business rate income, which has yielded a further 250,000 that we feel comfortable building into the budget for next year. We've also reprofiled our borrowing costs because there's been some slippage in the capital programme, and also we've not had to externally borrow as early as we originally thought. That means that there's a reduction in terms of some of our borrowing costs in 24-25, and they won't come in now until 25-26 year. We originally set up a treasury management reserve, and we're looking to fund some of the increase in borrowing costs from that treasury management reserve. We're now only using an additional 47,000 from that treasury management reserve, and then you'll see that we're no longer using the budget management reserve at the bottom, where we were originally planning to take £75,000. So that puts forward a draft budget for you in front of you that's now fully balanced, and we feel is robust for 24-25. In your papers, you have an Appendix A, which sets out your draft budget summary. That sets out the total cost of the services at the very top of your budget summary, transfers to and from reserves, and then you end up with a net budget of 16.433 million. That's funded by a number of grants, as we talked about just a minute ago, and also your council tax and business rates income. So the proposed council tax increase in front of you this evening of 2.99% yields £7.7 million worth of overall council tax income for North Devon Council. That equates to just under half of your net budget funded by council tax, 3.2 million from baseline funding from business rates, and then the £3 million worth of additional growth in the business rates income for next year. We then have the government grants that I've touched on already, and that brings your total funding to £16.433 million, and therefore a balanced budget for your consideration this evening. So the assumptions within that budget is we have factored in a 4% increase on salary costs. The salary costs have increased between 6 and 7% over the last couple of years. Inflation has started to come down from where it was through 23-24 and 22-23. So we have assumed a 4% increase on the salary base for next year, a 2.99% increase on the level of council tax in front of you this evening, a 5% uplift in most fees and charges, some going up by slightly different amounts, but they were set out in your previous fees and charges report that you have now approved, and the garden waste subscription increasing from £55 to £60. The level of strategic grants are set out in Appendix B on page 221 of your papers this evening, and that table just sets out those grants. There's no planned changes to those grants and no reductions. The only change is the change that came about through 23-24, where Go North Devon ceased to operate, and the services provided previously by Go North Devon have been picked up by Mid Devon Mobility, the Ring and Ride service, and Age Concern for the shop mobility element. So there's just a movement from that grant into those two core areas. So there's no planned reductions to strategic grants. However, we have been supporting those organisations in other ways. For example, the CAB were based in Linton House. We managed to provide them with accommodation at a very cheap rate. That enabled them to resolve their accommodation challenges, but also it enabled us to provide services to similar clients, but also based in one area. So that was a real positive in terms of clients coming in to visit North Devon Council, but also the CAB. We've also just recently launched the North Devon Community Lottery, which is reaching out to good causes. The lottery tickets have gone on sale this week. We launched a couple of weeks ago with the good causes. We've had 42 good causes that have now been approved and set up. So that is now live. We've got 9 pending approval and 6 awaiting completion. So that should give us around 60 good causes that will benefit from those lottery resources coming into them. At the moment, even with the lottery tickets only being sold this week, there is already about £4,000 worth of revenue for those good causes just on the ticket sales of this week. So a real positive story in terms of benefiting some of those charitable and voluntary organisations moving forwards. In terms of the level of reserves, they're set out in your Appendix C on pages 223 and 224. You have a general fund balance of just under 1.25 million. That's a level of 7.6%, which is within the recommended level of 5 to 10% for this size of authority. And you have earmarked reserves of £6.3 million forecast at the end of next financial year. They're set up to fund things such as capital projects, and as the title says, they're earmarked for specific purposes. The details of those are set out on pages 223 and 224, breaking down those reserves into what they're held for. One thing I have to assure you as part of the budget in front of you this evening is that that budget is robust, and also the level of reserves shown on this slide is adequate for this size of authority moving into the next financial year and beyond. The medium-term financial strategy has been refreshed based on the updated funding that's come forwards. As you can see from this table, 24-25 now has a forecast budget gap of 0, so you have a draft balanced budget in front of you. A forecast gap in 25-26 of just under £500,000. That's assuming a similar level of funding this year rolling into 25-26 with an inflationary increase, but no cut to government funding. However, the detail behind the medium-term plan does set out those numbers in a bit more detail on pages 225 and 226, which takes into account, looking ahead, what we feel in terms of cost increases and inflationary pressures on the council budget, what changes there may or may not be to council income sources, and also then takes that longer-term view in terms of government funding. As you can see in 26-27, the forecast gap then increases to around £3 million because we've taken the worst-case scenario of government funding and the level of retained business rates reducing by around about £2 million. Again, the fair funding review, we don't know the outcome of that or whether it will actually happen in 26-27, but we have to plan for the assumption that we're going to lose a significant amount of that retained business rates. We hope a larger chunk will be reallocated out to this sector with the pressures that we're seeing in some of the upper tier authorities and other areas of local government. We are assuming that a lot of that money will be redistributed to other parts of the sector. Details within the budget report on pages 212 and 214 just sets out what's not included in the medium-term financial forecast at the moment, assumptions and decisions that this council still needs to make moving forwards. But as you can see, that's quite a fundamental budget gap for 26-27. It is 2 years away, but if we're looking to bridge that, then this council needs to come together and agree proposals to actually mitigate that gap early, because obviously if you're making decisions, you can't wait for 2 years to make those decisions to bridge that budget gap. You need to start thinking about that now, and we need to put plans ahead to try and reduce that gap over the next year to 18 months. Fundamental to that will be looking at our commercialisation strategy. We already touched on the benefits of some of the work we've done so far, such as Green Lanes, as Councillor Walker alluded to earlier. That's had a positive financial benefit for this council. But we obviously will need to refresh that commercialisation strategy to bring it up to date in line with the current economic conditions, and also then bring proposals for you to consider, and also look to you members for your ideas coming forwards, similar to those that we addressed when we had the recent budget workshop. Finally, your draft capital programme is set out on 227 to 231. It sets out your capital projects that you have approved previously. There's no additional capital investment coming forward proposed as part of this report. Therefore, your programme for 23-24 to 25-26 is £36.8 million. That's funded via capital receipts or external borrowing of £15 million, £19 million worth of external grants and contributions, and around £3 million worth of reserves. The key thing there is the external grants and contributions of £19 million is a significant portion of your capital programme. So you're actually funding over half of your capital programme by external money that you're managing to draw down from government and other sources. So there's £37 million worth of investment. It's only actually costing this council less than £20 million. That's a really positive story in terms of the council investment in North Devon. And the recommendation to yourselves this evening, as part of the recommendations in the paper, is that the draft capital programme for the next 3 years be approved. So finally, in terms of those future options to consider, we need to look at additional income sources coming forwards. Yes, we can keep looking at ways we can make the services more efficient, but we've been doing that for a number of years now. We talked about increased pressure on services and demand for services such as homelessness. So therefore, cutting our cloth can only go so far. We need to look at ways we can bring in additional income. How can we also address the pressures from temporary accommodation and the increased demand in that service? Areas such as buying more properties that we've done so far, which has reduced that risk in terms of the financial pressures that other councils have been seeing. We probably need to go further and buy more properties to address that challenge moving into 24, 25 and beyond. We also need to look at exploring those alternative delivery models for housing, such as the properties we're owning at Balfour Street, and looking at ways we can maximise the benefit of holding those properties for alternative methods rather than social housing opportunities. We need to refresh the commercialisation strategy that was approved a couple of years ago and bring that up to date to align it with the current economic conditions, and we aim to do that by April 2024. In front of you, you also have on your papers this evening the minute extracts from the budget that's already gone through strategy and resources and policy development. And Chair, I refer you to the recommendations in 2.1 and 2.2 on page 202.
Thank you. Councillor Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Makes it pleasant reading. I'm not actually here to have a pocket on. Well done, lovely. Thank you very much. Very colourful as well. I was just picking up on a point that Councillor Walker made, where we wax lyrical about the new hub in Green Lane, which I'm sure is it will be a useful thing. However, Ilfracombe and South Molton have long been told that people cannot have face-to-face contact with councils anymore because it's outdated and we've got to use the web. And I believe that's been mentioned a couple of times now. So I just wondered what the difference is between people in Barnstaple and people in Ilfracombe and South Molton. I don't know if it's like a genetic difference, perhaps.
Similar point was raised at policy development. The hub in Green Lanes obviously is looking at provision of sort of multi-stakeholder, so not just North Devon Council services, looking at it as a way of ensuring that all council services are available to the public, but also other agencies being present there as well, similar to like we had in the FCA.
We have the one-stop shop in Ilfracombe, that one.
And the one-stop shop.
Yeah,
they took the funding away.
Councillor Bushover.
As I alluded to at Policy Development Committee, the provision at other offices has also been reviewed to look at where demand is coming in. So obviously, the majority of our demand comes in through Barnstaple. That's not to say that we obviously don't want to see demand coming through the other area offices. But as we've seen from visitor numbers, and that's been reviewed over a number of years, the level of demand for North Devon Council services face-to-face has reduced quite significantly. There are certain days when those services are more popular. So for example, in South Molton, when it's market day, the services obviously are a lot more popular. There's a lot more people living around the town. But we have to review the services and align them to where that demand is actually being seen. So what we're not saying is that we don't want to see face-to-face within those areas, but we have to align it to where the number of people are actually in. What those services are showing in Barnstaple, obviously that's North Devon Council building and obviously services. In Ilfracombe and in South Molton, those premises are owned by the town councils, and also North Devon Council services North Devon Council staff work providing services for the town council as well. So there is a responsibility there where obviously it's multifaceted and obviously provided by the town councils to also look at the resources and demands on their services and match that obviously to where the customer demands are.
Chair, I answered your question. Can I just say too that all those answers are actually in the report of the Budget Strategy Committee that Paul didn't make it. So, you know, they were all in that original report. So, and if Paul had come and put the points then.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I just also wanted to address Councillor Crabb's queries, and I had actually had quite a long conversation with Sarah Higgins regarding face-to-face council presence, and there is an acknowledgement that not everybody can do everything on the internet, and that we should have a physical presence where people can go in and go, I don't know what I'm doing here. It would be fantastic if we could have 9 to 5 in South Molton, Ilfracombe and Barnstaple. The reality is we can't, and as John said, that we need to prioritise it onto times when people actually do use the service. There will also be a lot of backroom activity at the hub. It's not just the people at the front doing work. There are other offices there, other areas, not necessarily offices. But it means that we will not be using Linton House, which is a very inaccessible, and I don't just mean that from the point of view of the fact it's too steep to get into. It's not on the bus route, it's way out of town, people don't know it's there. And it's removing a barrier to our residents to be able to actually access council services.
Thank you. Councillor Room.
Members, these challenging times when lots of councils are going bankrupt virtually and asking the government to be funding money from central government to be increased. Literally at the moment, I feel proud that the administration here, which is all members because we're a committee system, but the administration has delivered a balanced budget. We've come in at 2.99, which is £6.11 on a council D band, and we've actually not ceased any services, but we've actually increased them because the street marshal service would have finished at the end of March, but now we've actually funded a further 2 years of the street marshals, which the public have been crying out for, and we hear the voices of Ilfracombe, if you like, and therefore hopefully the street marshals will hopefully visit Ilfracombe, which I know Councillor Crabb's in favour of, and I'm sure the other Ilfracombe members are too. Just giving that reassurance, especially during the tourist peak times as well. So I would like to formally recommend those proposals in section 2.2 on page 202, that we accept those recommendations set out in front, because at a time where we had a dilemma in trying to make the budget balance, the bottom line is central government is not seeing rural councils or not feeding the funding through as they are urban councils. You know, the Rural Services Network, I met with their chief executive online last week, Kerry Booth, who's told me that, you know, they still, due to the damping down process, is that we are actually not funded the same as people in urban areas. Now, to me, that's not equitable. Because I think in rural areas, we've got less rural transport, we've got less connections there, we've got an health service, we've got an hospital that is one of the most rural hospitals going in the whole country. And therefore the need is greater. So I think that needs to be re-looked at by central government, whoever that is in future, and actually get some equitable funding for places, rural councils up and down the country, including North Devon. But I've no qualms in saying thank you to the officers for delivering what's been required from members and putting the budget together with what we've been saying that's our priorities, and I'd like to recommend those recommendations set out in the paper.
Yeah, can I just check that you're doing both 2.1 and 2.2, because 2.1 is the note as well. But
I know it comes to AP yet, that's what we're referring to.
All right, okay. But I would just like to congratulate John Triggs and his team. I think they do a phenomenal job and have come with a balanced budget in very difficult times. And I think as a council, we are very, very grateful for the work that they do, and the recommendations that they bring to us, I think are really outstanding. And we are extremely fortunate as a council for all the work that they put in during the last, several years. But it's going to be even more challenging, as we have been shown tonight, in the medium term, in the future, particularly if we lose the couple of million a year that we've been told that we might vote in. I haven't got great confidence in the fair funding review. The government's been talking about that for years, and it's never actually been fair funding for us in North Devon. Thank you.
Councillor Beaton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And John, thank you to you and Ken and Helen really for producing this budget and everybody involved in it. I think we do incredibly. I think, you know, it's like leisure centres, isn't it? I mean, so you read about leisure centres being closed all over the country, and yeah, we've got a new leisure centre in the Panion Market and all that. So it is incredible, really, what we do as a small Shire county. I've got a question, and I was interested on the revenue support grant. I was trying to fiddle through my laptop to see that sliding scale from 2015, whatever it was, but I would be interested in that. But just for my own benefit, really, as I'm talking. But the street marshal scheme is what I really got my feet for, and I think it has been an amazing initiative that we're supporting. And you know, I was in town a bit. I don't go into Barnstable that much when it comes to shopping. More likely to find me on a Friday afternoon, Saturday evening, but you will. It definitely has improved the vibe in the town centre, and it's brilliant. But I think me and Councillor Maskell approved, whatever I'm allowed to call a chair, but the we raised it at licensing at one point. We do get particular problems in some of our coastal resorts in the summer months, and you know, particularly around antisocial behaviour with, you know, youngsters drinking. So it'd be nice to just see if there's any flexibility with those street marshals, because you know,
Councillor Jones.
We do hear about Ilfracombe and South Malt and feeling a bit out of it, but there's an awful lot of our area, you know, is outside of those three main towns, and they have their own problems as well. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to raise that, and whether we speak to our parish councils and see if they're willing to put a little funding in, we can kind of third street marshal that deals with those sort of rural areas. But I just wanted to flag that really, because we do get that antisocial behaviour, and it does have a massive impact on those communities outside our town centres sometimes. But really positive on the whole. Just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you, thank you, Councillor Beaton. So a report by Hannah, Police Manager of Town Centres, will be coming to March strategy resources around the street marshal scheme proposal moving forwards. As members are aware, obviously the council's put £200,000 into the Town Centre Management Reserve. This report will look at, obviously looking back at the success of the street marshal scheme, obviously the recent addition, obviously of having Ilfracombe into the scheme over the winter months, and then it's for members to obviously set out that proposal moving forwards. At the moment, the proposal would be to continue with the existing scheme that's in place, but also we are looking for working with other stakeholders, so some of the town parish councils. There are contributions that potentially could come, and then discussions can take place with the town centre team to look at whether that street marshal scheme could be adapted and be flexible enough to then look at those other areas as well.
Mr. Bell, did you have your hand
Yeah,
up?
thank you. Thank you very much. I'll be brief. I'm sure people in Bronx would appreciate it if Councillor Biederman and Councillor Walker would have remembered them when they're talking about significant settlements. But my point being, £420,000 is a wonderful figure to see coming in for the second home tax, which will be in the 25-26 period. Councillor Bushell talked about the government sometimes working slowly. It's a real shame we're not seeing that in the 24-25 period, especially since that money we ring-marked for housing provision, I believe, and that would be a massive benefit if only it had been put through faster by our masters upstairs.
Point where order, Chair, when I made my comments, I was very specific that we raised it at licensing and that other large areas outside of the three main town centres. I'm guessing Bromley would be a large area outside of the town centre. Never mentioned Fremington. Thank you.
Okay. Right, we go back to the agenda. Item A, report of policy, Councillor Spears to report.
I'd like to move that we receive the report of the Policy Development Committee held on the 12th of February 24, Chair.
Thank you. Item B, report from Strategy and Resources, Councillor Root report.
I would like to know that we received the report of the Strategy and Resources Committee on the 5th of February 2024.
Thank you. We had a mover and a seconder, in accordance with the local authority standard orders England regulations as amended and the Constitution, council is required to take a recorded vote when setting its budget and council tax. Therefore, call out each councillor's name in alphabetical order and next reserves at the end of the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll call each councillor's name out after us. All those the Chair has just said, if you could please indicate whether you wish to vote for, against or abstain, please. So starting on Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Wiedemann.
For.
Councillor Bishop.
For.
Councillor Bushell.
For.
Councillor Cann. For. Councillor Clayton.
For.
Councillor Cragg.
For.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Hayward Booth.
For.
Councillor Hunt. For. Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Youssef.
For.
Councillor Knight.
For.
Councillor Lane.
For.
Councillor Lever. For. Councillor Leatherby.
For.
Councillor Maddox.
For.
Councillor Maskell. For. Councillor Milton.
For.
Councillor Norman. Councillor Petrinos.
For.
Councillor Prowse.
For.
Councillor Quinn.
For.
Councillor Roux.
For.
Councillor Spear. For. Councillor Stevenson. For. Councillor Tops.
For.
Councillor Turton.
For.
Councillor Walker. For. Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Williams. For. Councillor Wilson. For. Councillor Warden.
For.
And Councillor York. For. Okay.
Sorry, sorry.
Sorry, could you stand up, please? Sorry.
Rachel.
How would you like to vote, Councillor Renshaw? For. Thank you.
Item 16. Oh, sorry, that's right, please.
35 votes in favour, Chair.
Sorry, can we have quiet, please?
So I'll just announce the results of 35 votes for, 0 against and 0 abstained, so therefore it's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Item 16. Treasury Management Strategy Statement 24-25, pages 239-268. Report by John.
Chair. So members, in the previous item on the agenda, you considered the capital programme for the next few years. The Treasury strategy looks at those impacts that those capital plans have on our borrowing and our investments over the same period, and I'll just take you through the key points. The second table on page 243 shows the net financing need for the current and the next 3 financial years. That's the shortfall in funding to finance the approved capital programme, resulting in your borrowing need. You'll note for 24-25 that's estimated to be 8.9 million, with a further 2.7 million shortfall in the following year. The total historic outstanding borrowing need to finance the capital programme is known as the capital financing requirements. This is a key measure of the council's underlying need to borrow. The projections for the capital financing requirement are shown at the table at the top of page 244. This financial year it's projected to be 27.6 million, increasing to 39 million in 25-26. The amount of actual borrowing undertaken to finance this need will depend on the amount of year-end resources or reserves that we're expecting to have. In the current economic climate, it's still prudent to use some of those resources that we have to meet our borrowing need rather than going out and taking those external loans on. You'll see that in the table on page 246, we're projecting that our funds and reserves will allow us to offset some of the borrowing need by some £22 million this year and £15 million next year, and that's known as our internal borrowing. So our borrowing need less any internal borrowing is the amount we actually need to then go out and borrow externally. External borrowing is projected to remain at £3 million this financial year, but then increase by 20.5 million over the next 3 financial years. And that's to fund the existing capital programme that has already previously been approved. As we know from previous years, large slippages to the capital programme can result in delays to the level of external borrowing required. In 2021, we signed up to a leasing agreement for our vehicle fleet replacement. Whilst those costs increase the borrowing need, these schemes include a borrowing facility from the lease provider. So this borrowing is in addition to the external borrowing from the Public Works Loan Board, and that's shown on your tables as other long-term liabilities. This borrowing is projected to be just over £5 million next financial year. There are 2 key borrowing indicators for members to approve on page 250. First of all, the operational boundary, which is the expected limit of our external borrowing, and also the authorised limit, which is our maximum borrowing limit. Our external Treasury advisors' interest rate forecast has been provided on page 251. The bank base rate now currently stands at 5.25%, and they believe that's now peaked, and we're expecting small cuts as inflation and other economic data allow. We will continue to work closely with our Treasury advisors to keep rates under review and access the optimum time as to when we need to take on that external borrowing. Our investment strategy is covered on your agenda on page 257 onwards. We're not proposing any changes to the way in which we make our investments, being guided by the creditworthiness service from our Treasury advisors in terms of who we should be investing with and also for how long. We then set financial limits on those investments as shown on page 261 and within Appendix A to your report. As always, our approach will be security of our funds first, then liquidity needs before we consider the yield, i.e. the financial return. Now I'd like to refer members to the recommendations in section 2 of the report. I'm happy to take any questions and then refer you to item 16A, report of policy development. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Michelle? No? Lovely. Thank you. So we go to item A. Councillor, please. Steer, please.
I move we receive the report of the Policy Development Committee of the 12th of February 24, Chair.
Thank you. And item B, report of Strategy and Resources Committee, Councillor Room to report.
I move to receive the report of the Strategy and Resources Committee held on the 5th of February 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Seconder. Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Item 17, 10-year capital strategy, 2024-2034, pages 271 to 282. John, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the aim of the 10-year capital strategy is to take a longer-term view of the financial sustainability of the council and to provide you as members with the financial context for making your future capital decisions. The report in front of you is broken down into two timeframes. Firstly, the medium term, which has been largely covered off by the Treasury strategy and the medium term financial strategy that you've previously seen on your papers this evening. Secondly, the long term from the years 28-29 to 2033 to 2034. We've identified on page 276 the ongoing financial commitments such as replacing our vehicle fleet after their asset life. Extending our financial projections and including those additional expenditure items, we can then start to look at the impact on our longer term funding. You'll see from the table on page 277 that the capital financing requirement, which is our underlying need to borrow from the previous reports, is projected to remain at a high level, although decreasing from 36 million in 28-29 down to 30 million in 33-34 years. In the same way that our Public Works Loan Board external borrowing is forecast to reduce, that it will remain above 19.5 million over the longer term period. Clearly, there's a cost to this external borrowing, whether that's through Public Works Loan Board or through the finance leases, and that hits on our council's revenue budget that you've approved previously on your agenda this evening. That cost is set to remain at circa £3 million a year over this period, which will continue to add pressure to the longer term budget gap shown in your medium term financial plan. These projections assume a break-even capital programme after 25-26 year, so any further capital expenditure approved, which is not fully funded, would increase the borrowing projections and likewise the cost of the revenue budget in those future years. Again, I'd like to refer members to the recommendation section 2. I'm happy to take any questions and then refer you to item 17A.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Item A, then, report of the Policy Development Committee, Councillor Steer, and report. Thank you.
Received the report of the Policy Development Committee held on the 12th of February 2024.
Thank you. And item B, report of meeting the Strategy and Resources Committee, Councillor Room to report, please.
Thank you, Chair. To move to receive the report of the Strategy and Resources Committee held on February 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 18, council tax resolutions, 2024-25, pages 285 to 294. Over to you again, John.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you please now I'm going to sit down after this item. The council tax resolutions in front of you follow obviously the formal setting of the budget that you've approved earlier this evening. This sets out the budget increase to council tax for North Devon Council at 2.99%, or referred to £6.11 on a Band D property council tax. That results in a Band D council tax for North Devon Council of £210.39. Then, as we are the billing authority, then need to add on the precepts and the council tax levels for the other precepting authorities, i.e. Devon County Council, the Police Authority, the Fire Authority, and obviously your respective town and parish councils. Town and parish council precepts total 3.335 million. That results in an average Band D council tax for the town and parishes of £94.15. But obviously they differ depending which town and parish you're in. Obviously they have their own individual tax base. That does get added then to the council tax resolution later in your agenda, in your appendix. There were two preceptors who hadn't approved their budget when the papers were put onto the agenda. They only met last week. Firstly, Devon County Council. They approved the provisional precept in your paper was a precept of £60,792,073. The approved precept was in line with the figure that is in your paper, and that results in a Band D council tax level of Devon County Council of £1,715.67. So that's approved in line with the figures that are in your report this evening. The Devon and Cornwall Police and Crime Commissioner previously approved at their panel meeting on the 2nd of February their precept of £9.7 million, resulting in a Band D council tax for the police of £274.50. And then finally, Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Authority met last week on the 16th of February and confirmed their precept of £3.532 million, resulting in a Band D council tax level of £99.68. Table on page 286 then sets out the individual precept amounts for each precepting authority of the District Council, Devon County Council, the Police, Fire and the Town and Parish Councils, resulting in an average Band D across North Devon Council of £2,394.39. That differs depending on which town and parish you are residing, and the council tax resolution that is set out in Appendix A sets out firstly the council tax base, which were the average number of properties that you approved at your January council meeting. And then that sets then through to the resolution for the individual precept amounts from the major preceptors, resulting then finally in the individual town and parish council taxes, including all of the major preceptors set out on pages 292 to 293. And then you can see the Band A to Band H council tax levels for the parishes of Arlington right the way through down to Witheridge. That sets out all of the council tax levels in your resolution for approval this evening. And Chair, I refer you to recommendation in 2.1 on page 285 for members to approve the formal council tax resolution 2425 as set out in the report in Appendix A. And any questions on what the report is voted?
Councillor Roux.
Madam Chair, I formally move recommendations set out in 2.1 that the council approve the formal council tax resolutions for 2425 set out in Appendix A to this report.
Thank you. Do I have a second there? Thank you. If anyone wants to ask any questions before we take the vote. Thank you. Right, all in favour? Oh, sorry, that is correct. Correct myself then. It's a recorded vote, this one. So,
Thank you, Chair. Starting with Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Wiedemann.
For.
Councillor Bishop.
For.
Councillor Bushell.
For.
Councillor Can. For. Councillor Clayton.
For.
Councillor Crabb.
For.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Hayward Booth.
For.
Councillor Hunt. For. Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Youssef.
For.
Councillor Knight.
For.
Councillor Lane.
For.
Councillor Lever. For. Councillor Leatherby.
For.
Councillor Maddox.
For.
Councillor Maskell. For. Councillor Milton.
For.
Councillor Norman.
For.
Councillor Trinos.
For.
Councillor Prowse.
For.
Councillor Quinn.
For.
Councillor Renshaw. Yes. For. Councillor
For.
Councillor Spear. For. Councillor Stevenson. For. Councillor Tops.
For.
Councillor Turson.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Williams. For. Councillor Wilson. For. Councillor Gordon.
For.
Councillor York. For. So to announce the results, Chair, the 35 votes for, 0 against and 0 abstained, so that's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Just want to remind you, members, that tonight this is actually being recorded. So please take the meeting a little bit serious. Thank you. Item 19, corporate plan. Thank you, John. Pages 295 to 302. Councillor Room, please.
Members, following the workshop that we all attended many months ago, we put this into a lovely corporate plan which sets the direction of the council going forward, and it's a strategic framework where officers will work towards our aims within those headings and themes that are in our corporate plan. So you've all seen it, you've all read it, and it's put into a nice colourful glossy document for you all to approve or tonight. So I would formally recommend that members approve the refreshed corporate plan 2023 to 2027. And don't forget, we can refresh it any time if you need to change it at any time, but this sets the direction of it.
Councillor Knight.
Not so easy. When was this document put together? Because I had no part of it. We've had no part of it. And obviously, my attention, well, I can't remember having any input on the Parliament made. And I'm very interested in the 10 points there, particularly 2 of them, which I can't really understand that we can honestly have any input on at all. But who am I looking at, Chair? Yes. So, yes, I approve it if you like, but I would have loved to have made the opportunity to have some input into it. Hanging in the air.
Sorry.
I'll let Ken answer that one.
No, I was just going to say, Kennedy, on you.
Yeah, as Councillor Room said, this was based on the workshop, which all members were invited, and I must admit, I can't recall who attended that workshop.
I was definitely there, sorry. I was there.
And the actions and the priorities that are in the corporate plan come directly from that workshop. If things haven't come through, and if comments that were made at that workshop haven't come through into this, then I'm happy to have that discussion. But certainly, an awful lot of the content of this was based on what was presented at that workshop.
Thank you. I'm just saying it can be altered. You suggested it can be altered at any time. So I have 7 points there, which I can't remember being agreed upon the papers.
I mean, if members go to the back page of the corporate plan, it does say that it can be reviewed continuously. And the whole idea, and this was exactly the same with the other corporate plans, that we keep that in continual review, because the priorities do change. Things happen that we need to try and address. If you think back 2 years, for instance, we never thought we'd be seeing the demand on refugee accommodation, for instance. So things do change in the course of the lifetime of the council, so it is absolutely right to keep it continuing in review.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I would second this, especially in view of what our chief executive just said, that if we need to change some of it as we go along, that's fine, we can do so. But at least if we adopt this tonight, we have something to work towards. Thank you.
Thank you. I know you said you seconded it, but I don't think we had a mover.
Yeah.
You did move it. Right, thank you. Okay, we've had a mover, we've had a seconder. All in favour? Thank you. Karen. Thank you very much. Item 20, appointment of co-opted independent member to governance committee, pages 303 to 310. John, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is a report that went through governance committee recently, so I'm not planning to go into too much detail. It follows an independent review by Sir Tony Redmond, openly called the Redmond Review, into effectiveness of audit and governance committees. Members of the governance committee in January considered the context around one of the recommendations from that report, which was the consideration to be given to the appointment of at least one independent member suitably qualified to your audit committee, or as known to be known in our committee as governance committee. Resolution for members at that meeting was to approve or recommend to full council the appointment of a co-opted independent members of the governance committee. be recommended to full council, including the required changes to the constitution be considered at full council, and also to amend the scheme of members' allowances to include a special responsibility allowance of £200 per annum for a co-opted independent member of the governance committee. The appointment of an independent member and the recruitment has been carried out through Devon Audit Partnership, who provide the internal audit service for North Devon Council and a number of the Devon authorities. They have advertised for the role, and a number of applicants came forwards. There was an applicant who came forward from the North Devon area, and the outcome from the recruitment process has concluded that a suitable candidate who is based in North Devon has been identified. Their CV and experience has been shared with myself. And I've also met with her personally and also through Devon Audit Partnership. And the opinion from us all concludes that they are suitable for the role of independent member for the committee. And it's now for this council to determine if you're happy to approve such an appointment. In terms of voting rights, their voice is equal, and obviously their voice on the committee is an important one in terms of their independence and also their professional opinion. But they are not elected and cannot be held accountable for it in the same way as other committee members, i.e. like themselves, who are elected through elections. Therefore, from a voting perspective, it's considered that they should not hold a vote. The changes to the Constitution are set out in your report in Appendix A, and the changes are shown with the track changes shown underlined. And the changes made are as follows: that the number of members appointed to the committee will be 9, with 1 additional independent member. The independent member is appointed to provide experience and expertise in audit, accountancy, finance and risk management to advise the committee in these areas that should have no voting rights. Appointment of an independent member should be for a 4-year period to ensure continuity of experience and expertise available to that committee. The quorum for the meeting will remain as present at 3, and the independent member will not count towards this number, and the committee will be quorate without the independent member being present. So, Chair, the recommendations are on page 303 in sections 2.1 to 2.4. Members approve the appointment of a co-opted independent member to the Governance Committee. Subject to that approval, that Naomi Whitmore be appointed as the co-opted independent member to the Governance Committee. The members approve the required changes set out to Part 3, Annex 1, Paragraph 5 of the Constitution as set out in Appendix A on page 309. And that finally, the scheme of member allowances for 23-24, 24-25 and 25-26 be amended to include a special responsibility allowance of £200 per annum for the co-opted independent member.
Thank you.
Any questions, Chair?
Thanks, no, Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John. As Chair of Governance, I think we welcomed the adoption of external co-opted person. I think we also discussed the exit strategy didn't work. There wasn't an exit strategy. So I'd like to recommend to move this item.
Seconded.
All in favour? Right, on item 21, minutes of committee. Before, just want to mention on the strategy resources. There. Thank you. Yeah, on item G, strategy resources, there's a note that is noted there was an error in the report, and therefore it's recommended that the minute be amended to that council and vary the capital programme by 3,500, no, 358,000 and 19.97, and not 405,112.32 as stated in the minutes. The minutes of this meeting will be amended at the next meeting of the committee on the 4th of March 2024. So can I have that we move on block?
I was going to say, can we move them on block with that amendment?
With that amendment, that's what
Second.
Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you very much, members.
Well done, Chair.
I think that's it.